Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, your reluctant prophet, Bill Reimer. You know, I hate hype and hyperbole. It's why I can hardly watch Fox News or any of these other so-called liberty-based news sources. Even Rebel disgusts me. Not because the essential premise isn't somewhat correct, but it's the hyper-emotional way they speak about serious matters and never cut to the chase. They don't examine what's going on and why and what can be done about it. It seems as though they thrive on catastrophizing without positing any solutions other than, once again, you should surrender your liberty, your autonomy to someone else so that someone else can fix your problems. That's not how the world works. So let's examine the essential premise of Marxism. First of all, Marxism is a cult of victimhood. It states that one part of society is being victimized by another. This is otherwise known as a Hegelian dialectic. And both Marx and Engels, who invented Marxism, used Hegel's dialectic to create their dialectical materialism. And then there's the other aspect of communism, that it's essentially a materialistic philosophy. It reduces everything to material want and need. It completely negates and denies the spiritual aspect of mankind. So we're going to start to examine today how this zero-sum game is playing out today, because we're not looking at the original form of Marxism as was invented by Marx and Engels. So let us examine what woke actually means. And of course, I will be blunt and exact in my examination of it. The original premise of Marx and Engels pitted the working class proletariat against the elite known as the bourgeoisie. The proletariat are people who earn a wage for a living. In other words, the majority of us who are employed by others, while the bourgeoisie are those who make their living through property or through ownership of the means of providing services and controlling the production of goods, namely the elite. In our time, the wealthiest among them are investment bankers and CEOs of multinational conglomerates who control budgets far larger than many nation states. Today, the bourgeoisie must also include the bureaucratic and political class, who by means of controlling lobbying grant those who provide services and produce goods special privileges, thereby attempting to control the economic market. This is why we no longer have free markets, if indeed we ever did, since we have regulated economies controlled by big government. Controlled markets are grossly inefficient, given the impossibility of those in government to determine how individuals will react to the market, since it involves literally billions of unpredictable human beings. Of course, Marxism ignores this fact. Since this poses an enormous problem to the Marxists, the facts must be manipulated to justify their constant interference in the market. And there is no better way to manipulate people than through fear, demoralizing, and arbitrary control, which Marxists invariably label as benefiting the socialist collective. In other words, we must forego individual liberty, autonomy, and freedom to benefit the majority under the banner of the needs of the many outweighing the rights of the few. But how is this accomplished, since people are averse to surrendering freedom they once enjoyed? Why, by creating a cult of victimhood, of course, since this is the original premise of socialism, namely pitting the working class against the elite. But why have so many of the workers come to believe that the elite are their salvation? This we shall examine next. I have often mentioned that by the 1930s, intellectual Marxist professors from Frankfurt, Germany, had realized Marx and Engels had got it all wrong, that the worker was never going to spontaneously rise to overthrow the elite. So they reinvented Marxism. In the new class struggle, workers were replaced by intersectional oppression, and society itself became the enemy. Our very culture was condemned as a white patriarchal tyranny of post-colonial oppression. Fathers were vilified. Manhood became toxic. Women were told they were being oppressed by their husbands. Sexual norms and morality were deemed to be inhibiting, and homosexuality, indeed any conduct that could destroy the nuclear family up to and including pedophilia, was lauded since it would advance the Cultural Marxist Revolution. Is there any wonder, then, why we live in an out-of-control society where weakness and frailty are being lauded and victimhood has become not merely socially acceptable, but is literally being taught in our schools? From the universities, the mental pathogen of cultural Marxist critical theory has spread into every corner of society, consuming even businesses who obviously have now demonstrated that they are willing to forego profitability while insulting their customers' sensibilities to promote a radical cultural Marxist agenda. The very fact that more than one extremely renowned and profitable company has ignored their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders and their accountability to their customers is proof that under the influence of this mind worm, nothing will be permitted to stop the Cultural Revolution, fomented by the loons who have taken charge of the cultural Marxist insane asylum we now live in. But who has become an even greater victim than the intersectionally oppressed under this prevailing cultural Marxist revolution? Why, Mother Earth, of course. Hence the constant harping on constant emissions as the despoil of the planet, even though the planet has grown ever greener under the slight increase in carbon emissions, to the point where we are now feeding more people than was previously thought possible. Let us remember that CO2 comprises a mere 0.04% of all atmospheric gases. Of course, for every proof that capitalism and individual well-being are coefficients of one another, the radical neo-Marxists must try yet again to control what is ultimately beyond even their all-controlling grasp. Malthusian doomsday prophecies and prophetic warnings of disease and plague are merely pages from the cultural Marxist playbook written by control freaks who assisted those who created both COVID and its failed antiviral antidote. These involve some of the largest pharmaceutical firms on earth who have cooperated with both Western governments and the CCP to play God by creating a previously unheard of deadly pathogen. These are conclusions which has now become public knowledge. Now it's up to every one of us who believe in personal autonomy and limited constitutional government to expose cultural Marxist critical theories' ungodly agenda. The left laughs when we call this agenda woke, since cultural Marxist critical theory is being taught in every university in Canada, and I invite you to type into Google search engine or any other search engine you wish to use, Bing or any other. Type any university of your choice and look for critical theory in their curriculum. You'll find it in every university. As a result, cultural Marxism has corrupted every Canadian institution, including our metastasizing bureaucracy, along with the majority of those from our political class. We need to surgically remove these pathological beliefs from Canadian public discourse, starting with our children by teaching them the value of taking responsibility for themselves while demanding that critical theory be removed from all curricula since it's being paid for at the taxpayer's expense. We aren't victims. We are victimizing ourselves by permitting this to happen. The one thing that Marx and Engels got right, the elite aren't our friends. So now that they are claiming to be the savior of the working class, of the proletariat, we can clearly see that they have simply turned the Hegelian dialectic on its head to pit two sides against one another where they will invariably be the winner as long as we believe their lies. It is up to us to stop participating in their lies and to challenge those lies wherever and whenever we find them. I am sick and tired of listening to the excuses made by Christians. I have never, well, yeah, I have. Christianity has grown so weak and pathetic that it's almost impossible for me to believe that some of you are actually converted, given how unwilling the fellowships you attend are to speak up against critical theory, which is the single greatest apostasy of our age. These are things to think and pray about. I don't want to catastrophize because the responsibility is up to us. If we believe that his kingdom will come and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven, then it is up to us to usher in his kingdom. That's your responsibility, as it is mine. I intend to do my bit. Do you intend to do yours?